Up.
Did you hear that? We're recording now.
Yep.
Yes, okay. So once again, I will call uh, the meeting, the January 12th, 2026 meeting of the Center for Crime Victim Services Board to order. I would note that there is a quorum of three constituting a quorum of the five-member board present for today's meeting. And let's proceed with the agenda. The first agenda item appears to be a review of the minutes of the last meeting, December 8th, 2025. I have reviewed them and I had no comments or corrections to make. Richard, Susie, does anybody have anything else to add?
I reviewed them, but I wasn't present, so they look fine to me.
And Richard, you're okay? Thumbs up?
Yep.
Okay, the minutes, the draft minutes of the December 8th, 2025 meeting are deemed approved. The next item of business appears to be the compensation report. Who is reporting on that? Christine?
Nope, that will be me.
Yeah, and I gave you a host permission, so if you want to share.
Perfect. Yes. All right. Can everybody see the board report?
Yes.
All right. So for the month of December, our top spending category again was domestic assault at $14,807.47. Followed by homicide at $3,895.82, and then aggravated assault at $2,096.75. We made a total of 48 payments on 30 claims, totaling $22,990.98 for the month of December. The sexual assault program made 10 payments on 6 claims for a total of $6,697.13. Moving over to our expenses by type, the top category for this month was lost wages at $10,671.21, followed by rent and relocation at $5,615.68. And that was followed by counseling at $3,439.90. Interestingly, for the month of December, for the first time in a while, we made 0 payments on funeral. We did have homicide-related payments, but not funeral specifically. So for the sexual assault program, for sexual assault counseling, paid a total of $1,000. Follow-up appointment was $19.81. And initial sexual assault exam, we spent $5,677.32. Any questions before I move on to year to date?
No questions, but
Yeah.
it's great to see homicide down.
It was definitely, I think I even read an article, definitely a significant decline for the month of December. It's been pretty consistent for the past 2 or 3 years, but yeah, no, definitely nice to see it trending down. All right. So year to date, so for FY26 so far, our top spending category has been domestic assault. So far, we have spent $82,777.99 in comparison to last fiscal year, $47,861.51. This is pretty consistent with what we're seeing nationally. There has been an increase in domestic assault across the United States. Second top spending category is homicide for a total of $59,770.70. In comparison to last year, pretty consistent to what we were spending last year. And then aggravated assault at $55,099.45. As you can see, it has doubled since last year, what we're paying. For categories year to date, our top spending category so far for FY26 has been lost wages, totaling $52,706.70. In comparison to last year, we spent $13,204.91. So definitely an increase. That's followed by medical facility at $45,407.11 in comparison to last year, $31,102.61. And then coming in third is funeral, $44,041.55. In comparison to $42,267.95 that we spent last year. So far for FY26, we have made 411 payments on 132 claims for compensation totaling $252,242.60. For sexual assault, 41 payments have been made on 24 claims for a total of $60,511.82. Total for both programs so far for FY26 is $312,754.42. Any questions before I move on to claims by county? No? All righty. All right, so for the month of December, we received a total of 44 claims, 6 from Addison, 10 from Chittenden, 1 from Caledonia, 1 from Essex, 2 from Franklin, 4 Lamoille, 1 Orange, 3 Orleans, 5 Rutland, 2 Washington, 2 Wyndham, and 7 Windsor. So the only counties we did not receive any claims for the month of December was Bennington or Grand Isle. So we did receive more claims than we have been for the month of December. So for December 2025, we received 44 claims in comparison to December 2024's 23 for a 91.3% increase. So year to date, we have received 204 claims as opposed to last year, 227 for a 10.13% decrease. For the month of December, the sexual assault program only received 7 claims in comparison to last year, 29 for a 75.86% decrease. And year to date for sexual assault, they have received 84 claims in comparison to 119 last year for a 29.41% decrease. And yep, that's just how many we have received from each county to date. 44 for the month of December, totaling 204 claims so far for this fiscal year. Any questions? All right, I will go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Anna. The next order of business appears to be the restitution unit report. Is that Michelle?
Michelle's sick today, so Gina is going to give that report.
Yes, and it's going to be very short. So for the month of December, we collected $51,319.94. Our goal is $50,000, so we were over by a little bit over $1,300. We advanced for the month of December from our fund $37,070.46. We received a total of 106 new orders for December, mostly from Chittenden. We got 37, and we paid 313 victims last month. That's pretty much all I have. Any questions?
Apparently not. So thank you. And let's move on to the financial report. Carol? Let's hear all the good news.
Okay, I'm trying to share my
You got
screen.
it.
I see it.
Oh, you can see it? Okay.
Mhm.
It doesn't show my screen. Alrighty. So we're going to start off as we usually do with our special fund receipts. You all hopefully had an opportunity to get the board financials prior to this meeting, and what I had some notes and highlights in there that we'll discuss today. Primarily, we're halfway through the fiscal year. So this marks our December financial report. So we are halfway through the fiscal year. What we are seeing, as we've continued to see, is that we're still in the red for all of our special funds. What that means is, again, based on where we need to be in our budget appropriation, This is how much revenues have come in and then where the change or the deficit is. Again, at 50% through the year, we should see this number closer to 50, and we're not. The estimated projection right now is about 406,000 in red for the comp, 288 for restitution, and 289.79 for the DVSB fund. Down here, we're seeing that overall the compensation fund has actually increased slightly. That's 19,000 since last year's revenues. We're seeing about a 30% decrease in revenues into the restitution fund, and we're seeing about a $10,000 increase in revenues from the DVSB fund. Any questions on that?
Can you share any insight into why collections for restitution are down so much?
So it's not just collections, and if you don't mind me, I'd like to actually kind of show you another flow chart sort of. I know restitution is a little more challenging to understand in a lot of ways, including myself. I've been doing this work for over 12 years now, and restitution always becomes a question of, what's going on with the fund. So I'd like to share this if you don't mind. What I've done is kind of give a little synopsis of restitution. So we have a couple things going on. The restitution unit was created within the Center for Crime Victim Services for the purpose of ensuring that crime victims receive restitution when it's ordered by the courts. The restitution fund itself receives a 15% surcharge on court fines and fees and traffic tickets. Those fines and fees from the courts themselves flow directly into the restitution fund. Those funds were basically established to pay for the cost of the restitution unit, to pay for operating and personnel and so forth. The restitution judgment orders are collected by the restitution unit themselves. So our case collectors actually collect restitution on behalf of victims from the offenders. They are responsible for collecting, enforcing, and verifying the court-ordered restitutions, and the amount that they collect goes directly to the victims. Now, in addition to that, what you just heard Gina talk about is that for certain eligible restitution orders, they can advance up to $5,000 from the fund. So think about that. So meaning that it may take years to collect that $5,000 or any restitution order for that matter. But the reality is we're giving out money in advance to victims, right? Before we're actually collecting that money. Because remember, everything they do collect goes directly to victims. Vermont is the only state that has a fund that allows for advance of funds to eligible victims through the restitution and judgment orders. What we've seen is not the collections per se going down, meaning that, again, let's keep in mind that what the restitution unit collection folks are doing is they're collecting the money, making sure that the victim gets it, right? But what we're seeing is those courts, fines, and fees, and this is across the board. It's not just restitution. What we're seeing is those fines and fees that we truly depend on to support the Center for Crime Victim Services, whether it's through the restitution unit or the compensation unit and the DVSB fund, rely solely on those traffic ticket fines and fees. What we've seen is over a 47% decline in those revenues in the last few years. And you can see that I did this specifically for restitution, but this is across the board. That's why all the funds are in the red, because it's not just one fund. Because we all rely essentially on those same sources of revenues, it impacts all of the funds across the board. The revenues for restitution specifically, since in 2019, we were bringing in about 2.3 million. Again, that's both the courts and the restitution unit itself. What we saw in 2024, so just 5 years later, is that the revenues were 1.5 million. So we all know that at the same point, the pandemic happened. We saw a significant decrease in traffic tickets. And what we have seen too with other things that are happening, restorative justice and other programs that impact fines and fees, is that we're just not getting the revenues that we used to get by any means. And that, again, really, we're a state mandated program that collects restitution on behalf of victims. But unfortunately, the system that was set up to do that is not working, the fines and fees. And Jen can talk about this more, but we continually have meetings and talk about the fact that the revenues have decreased. So we're expected to do more. As you can see in the next slide, the next section is that actually in 2024, so the same time that those revenues went down, the restitution unit actually received a 49% increase from the previous year in restitution judgment orders. So what we're seeing, revenues are decreasing, restitution judgment orders are increasing. So again, the court's fines and fees were established to support personnel in operating. These fines and fees no longer support it. CCVS has had to, essentially, when I create a budget now, I have to create a budget that's about $500,000 less than I was in 2019 because we don't have the revenues to support a higher budget. And even now, when you see my special fund receipts, you see that even though I've reduced it by 500,000, the revenues are still, so when we see that $288,000 deficit, it means that the likelihood is we're not even going to reach that 1.7 that we've already cut down to. So the revenues are not doing that. We've reduced staff. They're down one staff member. And the fund, as you'll see in the restitution cash flow, continues to have a deficit month after month, reasonably, because of these factors. So we look for possible solutions. Number one, obviously, is having the state of Vermont contribute more to the restitution fund. How that may play out, I do not know. We basically have to go and ask for funding all the time to support our funds because year after year, Jen and I will go and present saying our funds are not doing well. This doesn't even factor in the federal climate in our revenues, meaning like, again, we rely as well on federal administrative funds to support our staff, not specifically the restitution or the comp, but administratively. So when, again, we have a lot of things with us here. So the only other thing is working with the restitution unit to somehow possibly create greater efficiencies, procedures through technology or new systems that would possibly reduce the collection cost. You know, a lot of other collection agencies, if you think about it, often collect a fee when they collect something. So again, you know, they're working really hard. They're collecting money on behalf of victims. A lot of places would charge a fee, right? The offender would pay a fee and so forth for the amount. We don't do that. You know, so they're not like for all the money they collect, they don't get any additional fees. They only truly get the fines and fees that come in through those courts directly into the fund. Questions? I know I threw a lot at you. Sorry about that, but I just really wanted to give hopefully a snapshot of why we are where we are.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Carol.
Sure.
I know money coming in from through the federal pipeline. It's kind of a moving target. Do you expect the federal situation to get worse, or has it gotten as bad as it's going to get?
$1 million question, truly. Actually, I just before this meeting got an email that they're doing, let me look, I'm gonna see if I can look it up, but they're actually doing something right now. It just came through our listserv that they're doing the Crime Victims Fund Stabilization Act will be heard on the House floor today at 3 o'clock. And I have a thing to watch that. But essentially, they realize that it temporarily directs unused federal False Claims Act recoveries to the crime victim funds through 2029 to stabilize the funding after an 83% decline in the fund's balance that caused a 40% decrease in our VOCA victim fund or grant. So the VOCA grant is the largest grant that we receive on the federal level. So this just kind of talks a little bit about the fluctuation that we've had. You know, we went at one point in time, it was 6.7 million. and it's been down to 1.9 million. So that's what we deal with on a regular basis, is not knowing. So this is trying to like stabilize that funding so that, again, I've often had to say like, oh, VOCA's going up, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down. And with that, what's important is we've done a great job. I just want to say, as far as stabilizing funding for our subrecipients. So all those victim service programs out there for us have not seen a cut. When you hear about that 40% cut, a lot of states cut their VOCA subrecipients by 40, 50 or more percent. We have not done that. We've been able to level fund because we've done a good job of maintaining a base. So first of all, I think that's really important. What it also means, though, is we receive a 5% administrative funds to do that work. So when you go from 6.7 million down to less than 2 million, that means we receive less money as an organization to support the work that I do and our grants managers do and so forth. So we're now also having a great impact on the money that we have to actually afford our salaries and so forth. So again, we've been able to stabilize the programs, but I've had to really try to utilize every dime federally to support our salaries, our operating cost, and so forth. So we never know. We get these type of emails that lets us know like what's going on in the political climate, what we might be able to expect. But honestly, until we really get the allocation, we honestly don't know. We can kind of predict based on some of these emails, like, oh, we think it's going up, we think it's going down. We meet with our federal funders, especially for VOCA. I meet with them for both the VOCA comp and the VOCA assistance on a monthly basis. Just so that, again, we're involved in any conversations that are happening in DC around the VOCA funds. So, yeah, I think at this point in time, we just don't know. But what is important to know is that when I do build a budget, I build it on funds that we already have. So meaning what we're building now in the state fiscal year 27 budget is based on the actual VOCA award that we've received. So we're not guessing how much money we're going to have when we grant out. We already have it, and that's how we've been able to stabilize.
Carol, I had one more question, and that I read with interest your email to Mel and to Jen, and it appears you are opposed to hiring a replacement for a currently vacant collections position in the restitution unit. Is that my understanding?
That is absolutely right.
And
Yeah.
can you share with me and the other board members how a hiring decision such as that is made? I assume there's some kind of cost benefit analysis that is undertaken, whether it makes economic sense to fill a position like that.
So again, my responsibility as the director of finance is to let folks know where the funds are. So again, when I do these monthly board reports, I'm showing what the projections are, what I see has been happening, what the trends are. And so based on that, I do present to you, the board, and anyone that attends these meetings, my concern that I have watched this fund, the cash balance that I talk about, go down and down and down. And I don't do the hiring. I don't make those determinations. Often those are conversations within the departments themselves, the executive director, HR. My responsibility is to basically let folks know my concerns, that I don't feel like hiring another position at this time makes sense until we know if we can get additional revenues or have some other cost savings. Because what we do know is that each position, generally, depending on the benefits associated with that position, can cost $100,000 to $130,000 for a position. So what I see is, as you can see, when we look at I think this is helpful. Let's get to that. So my concerns are that what we're seeing now is, again, this is what we're talking about. The courts automatically are bringing in this much money. Collections, again, you can see that generally they collect more than what's coming in from the courts. The challenge is that it's costing us much more than what's coming in. Now, that's no fault of the restitution unit because, again, they have a job to do, they're doing it. But what it means is that, again, our personnel and operating are far exceeding what's coming in, and it's not enough with the court money based on, again, their responsibility is to pay out individuals, and that's what they're doing. And the challenge is there's just not enough coming in through the courts to support the cost of personnel and benefits, and that's why we're seeing these deficits. Now you can see this fund is down to 537,000, as I mentioned. Just last year, it was like 1.3 as a cash balance. So you can see that, this is important. This is what I say is our checkbook balance. And what we're seeing is month after month after month, the cash balance is going down to the point that obviously based on what I'm seeing, that it's pretty easy to see within a 6 to 8 month period that my projection would be that this fund, if it continues as is, would wind up in the red. So my recommendation was that maybe we hold off on hiring a position at this time until we have a better idea of what direction this might go.
I'd like to ask a question or two and follow up too.
Sure.
Are you done with your slides, Carol, or still got more?
I can, of course, show you whatever you ask for, but this is
I'll-
the one that I guess we're really talking about at this time.
Well, I know I have more general questions. If you have more presentation to make, I'll wait.
Again, what I do usually show, if you don't mind, is this is what I talk about when I talk about our checkbook balance, so to speak. And what I mean by that is it's important to look at where we are. So again, how did we start off in July 1 with compensation? We started off with 1.6 million. We see as of December, we're down to 1.5. Now, keeping in mind that in the month of December and some of November, we started using state dollars to pay for victim compensation claims. So this represents the fact that we are no longer using federal funds to support victim compensation claims. We're actually using the fund. But as you can see, the fund is healthy right now. Then we get to restitution. And again, you can see that we started off the year with 885,000. We're already down to 537. We look at the DVSB fund, again, started at about 217,158. So that's why you're seeing my reds in the deficits. That's what this is right here. So we're looking at where did we start, how much is coming in, how much is going out, and then we look at just strictly how much is coming in and how much is going out. And then down here, these are our appropriations based on, again, how much money do we actually have authority to spend based on our approved budget through the state of Vermont, and how much have we spent and what's our remaining amount that's available to us through our state fiscal year 26 appropriation. So that's that. So that's the last piece, I guess, that I usually have on my agenda.
Could
Richard?
I just wanted to say, since that Greg had asked specifically the federal landscape, has absolutely nothing to do, unfortunately, with restitution. All of the monies that we get for restitution come from state, and they unlike compensation, where we have the VOCA funding, which is what Carol was talking about, that they're doing the VOCA fix, hopefully having a meeting on a vote on that this afternoon. I just wanted to make sure that was clear to all the board members, because the difference between federal and state sometimes can get kind of blurry and confusing.
Thank you,
Okay.
Christine. Yes, it certainly can, but thank you for clearing that up. The compensation program is very different than the restitution in the way that they do get back 75% of all the state dollars that we use, again, through those fines and fees that are collected through the state. We do get 75% back as reimbursement through the federal VOCA compensation grant, and that's what we've been using. So I've been utilizing those federal dollars for a couple of reasons. Number one, not knowing the federal climate, I've been trying to use up money before they froze it, because there used to be like all these fears a few months ago, if you recall, about freezing funds and so forth. So we've been using funds that we do have available to us. So we did utilize those federal dollars to help support the compensation program. We don't have that same revenue source for the restitution unit. Back to Richard, I think you had a couple questions.
Yeah. Well, first of all, as background, one, I've always, ever since I've been a board member, struggled to understand the details of the budget. Number two, some of you may recall that a year or two ago, I offered to and drafted a proposal to do some publicity about the financial challenges of running this program. But this is a general question. It doesn't require an answer now, but it's always on my mind when I listen to your report, Carol. So it's directed to you and or Jennifer. How, as a board member, am I to know, or is the board to know, or somebody who has to decide to know, when it's time to formally say there is a hiring freeze, or we need to cut back on staff by attrition when people retire, or that we need to change our caps, lower our caps on compensation for X, Y, and Z, et cetera, or this program cannot continue to support advocates around the state, et cetera, because we don't have the money to leave it to the counties or somebody else. So is it my responsibility as a board member and the other four to look at this and say, you know what, month after month after month, there are these kinds of negative reports, and the differences in the balances, et cetera, that raise concerns. Kind of, given the world of politics we live in now, I can't imagine there's going to be any largesse for victims coming down the pike, any pike. So that question is, how will I know, as let's say, a well-meaning but ignorant board member, about when it's time to do some serious belt tightening or liquidating of some aspects of the program? Are you going to tell me? Is Jennifer going to tell me?
I will
Assuming
give,
that takes place, has to take place someday.
yes. And I mean, part of what I do is to educate the board on our finances, where we're at. And that's why I do try to give you highlights of my concerns, because I have been doing this work for a while. And again, it's amazing how much it's changed in just a few short years. So I do try to say that I normally don't get into, again, departments hiring and so forth. That will be a Jen question. I do want to bring up one thing that you mentioned, though, Richard, and you mentioned advocates. It should be clear that a few years back, we used to support the victim advocates through the state's attorney's office with our VOCA funds and our compensation special fund. We used to actually take $712,000 a year out of the compensation fund. Again, when these revenues started declining, Jen was instrumental in finally moving the cost, which is now an over $3 million budget for the victim advocates at the state's attorney's office, removing it from the Center for Crime Victim Services, thus reducing the burden on the compensation fund and our VOCA funds. So those advocates that work throughout the state are actually paid with state dollars, and CCVS, the Center for Crime Victim Services, no longer has to support their salaries and benefits. But if Jen wants to jump on, if anybody, I'm going to stop sharing, and unless you have some specific questions to my slides. No? Okay.
Okay, so I think it's time to move on to the center update. And Jen, you're up, and I'm sure Richard and I and Susie would be very interested in hearing your comments on Richard's questions.
Sure, thank you. The budget issue has been longstanding. This is not something that is new. We've been reliant upon special funds since forever. That's what established the center. There was no general fund commitment to that, and there still, is hesitancy to do that despite our best requests. There's just no buy-in, and there's not going to be buy-in this year. I'm just realistic about it. They're trying to feed people, house people, keep people warm. We're not going to get anything this year. I've been around and done this too much. We got our 3% plus in general fund increase, which will, which will change lives here at the center. But I think that we've done everything possible. Carol has really tried to, if it weren't for Carol's work, we would not be afloat as a center. She is always thinking ahead. She's always cautious. We get pushback from subgrantees. You got this money, spend it. And Carol is always thoughtful about no, we got to kind of be measured. As far as what the board's role in deciding what our staff looks like, that would be brand new to me. I was at the center from 2002 to 2009. I don't recall that ever being something the board weighed in on. And I've been in this position for over 4 years, and it's certainly not something the board has spoken on. And I think that would require, frankly, a lot more conversation so that you would be understanding of what people are being asked to do and not being asked to do. I personally, as ED, rely upon my program managers. Carol presents numbers in a really clear fashion. And, there are lots of different thought processes going on. We've lost positions that never get filled again, but we're also up against a place that, the numbers aren't really good, obviously. So for me, that's the best way that I can answer that question. We are not asking for a budget adjustment this year, and we are going to stay the course and pretty much ask for at least a 5% surcharge on the basically $2 million that we administer in general funds to subgrantees that we don't receive any administrative support. So again, nobody here is going to get rich over that, but it's fair to ask that the general funds that we do administer, we do get some support, because right now Carol and our grants team do all that work without any compensation.
So I assume, being new to the board, but it seems logical to assume that you and other center members have regular lines of communication with the legislature and the governor's office about all of these financial issues, especially.
Yes, Carol and I work with the legislature closely. I basically live there during the session, so these are not new issues to them. It's just a matter of, especially now, so many competing priorities with all the federal cuts, that does drain the ability for us to ask for additional general funds when there are so many significant holes that need support. So it's just the reality of it. I've done this long enough that I know the reality, and future looks like treading water.
So, okay, I thank you both for trying to answer my question. So I think what I do now is rely on the two of you to be as truthful and clear as you can about the financial status of the center, because I keep saying, well, I wouldn't really be able to decide that this is really a crisis and so on. Hopefully it won't ever be, and hopefully there'll be major changes, and I didn't that was just a general question. It's I'm sort of a lame duck at this point, but whoever turns out to be the next medical person on the board. And by the way, the PAs and the nurse practitioners in Vermont, they have legislation pending about their becoming sort of independent attending providers, as opposed to always being under the supervision or umbrella of doctor. So it's an ideal time to make the pitch to change the statute about, or clarify the statute about the medical person on the board from the center. Okay, thanks. I'll just fret quietly in peace.
Well, luckily, your livelihood doesn't depend on your employment at the center, so.
Yes, I may have to, yeah, that's correct.
I do have one other thing I'd like to bring up, Jen, if you don't mind, but Jen just talked about the fact that we're actually asking for a general fund appropriation of 5%. Again, it's on about $2 million worth of grants, so we're talking about $100,000. She also talked that we did get a 3% base. So what that means is of our general funds that we actually get, we got an increase of 3%. What you should know is that, first of all, I did say in my response that at this time, I don't feel like we should be hiring someone for restitution. Secondly, the reason why is that our state fiscal year 27, the budget that Jen and I are working on now and presenting, includes for the first time, because again, the center has primarily relied on those fines and fees from the special funds. What I am trying to do is navigate the system in a way that we are now going to use more general fund dollars to support what we consider to be normal operating costs that any other state of Vermont agency would be using general funds for. And what I mean by that is rent, because right now, we pay for rent for restitution and comp and the overall. So we're trying to hopefully take the burden off of some of these special funds and use some, although they're not a huge amount, general funds to actually support things like electricity, rent, our IT support. So I have been moving in a direction to utilize general funds more so to be able to reduce the burden on the special. So again, that's not really built into our budget until 2027. Hopefully we'll get this 5% ask that will increase the general fund appropriation, thus giving us more money to utilize general funds for some of the costs that are now being paid for with comp and restitution. So just wanted to throw that out there, if that's okay.
I mean, otherwise, oh,
I
sorry.
didn't cut you off. Do you have more of an update?
I don't need to go into the 8,000 things that I'm working on at the legislature. I can tell you, Dick, that the language you're looking for and the board redefinition is, up and running in the miscellaneous judiciary bill. So we will be looking at that for sure. And that bill always goes through. So you may not be held hostage much longer. It'll probably be till May. We'll probably have you till May if you can hang in there.
Oh, I'm not in a yank about it. I did ask the medical staff office at CVH about conceivably blasting a note to see if someone on the large staff, which includes, for instance, 70 or 80 PAs and NPs now, might be interested, but that's just an option if you're interested in it. Could probably send it to the UVM Health Network and get 1,000 replies. So.
Oh, okay. So you can funnel all those through and just tell it who the best person
I
is.
think I could. I'm not haven't done anything yet, but okay. Great.
Well, there's, a bunch of other things. I won't belabor those. I can always update them. I did want to clarify that I did follow up with the Attorney General's office after our last meeting when there was a question about whether or not, if we only had 3 people present, whether if the vote of 2 board members would qualify as something that could approve or disapprove. And our attorney at the AG's office said, yes, that could qualify. So before we went into the cases, I just did want to update that the AGO's opinion, as emailed to me, was that they thought that was appropriate.
Okay, that's very helpful and interesting to me. So thanks for getting that done.
Okay.
Anything else, Jen?
I have a lot, but I can read the room and just let the compensation staff share their cases with the board and move those forward.
Well, before we do that, we have to schedule meetings for the rest of 2026. I don't have any blackout dates, so I'm at staff's mercy as to scheduling.
Did you get the list that I sent of suggested dates? If we keep with the current Monday, staff here need time to get the data from the previous month to do the reports. So I went through the calendar and I sent you guys a list, but I can read them off. And if you guys just want to agree, I was thinking February 9th or 23rd, because we have to miss Martin Luther King Day.
Mel, as I said, I'm okay with any of the proposed dates on your list. So I'm not going to weigh in on those. Whatever works for other folks works for me.
Okay, Richard and Susan, do you have a preference?
I would prefer the earlier in the month, as long as it gives you time to do what you need to do before the meeting.
Okay. So Richard, does that sound
No,
okay?
I don't have, yeah, I have no particular nothing that should change the majority schedule right now. So I'm fine with what you wrote. No.
Okay, so how about if I just take the first date on all this list that I sent you for each month? I'll schedule the Zoom meetings for the first date that I provided you on that attachment. Will that work?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Well,
The last agenda item before we go into deliberative session, opportunity for public comments or questions. I'm not sure how this works. Does this ever happen?
no, we put that on there, that Jen wanted to have that on there, but I've never seen someone from the public show up. So,
All right, then before we close the public meeting, does anybody else have any comments, concerns, questions?
Good luck with the upcoming legislative session, Jen.
Thank you. It's going to be wild, I think, but.
Okay, Mel, is it time to turn off the recording? Close the
yeah,
public
I
meeting?
will do that right now.